Hello, world. Anyways, we're going to tackle an important philosophical question.
Mm-hmm.
Should you raid your local Target?
For some, definitely.
Anyways, this is actually a serious video.
Serious.
We do not endorse raiding your local Target.
No, don't do it.
This is my best friend and brother-in-law, Isaiah. Isaiah, please introduce yourself.
My name is Isaiah. I live in Utah. I have one child, a wife, not multiple.
One wife.
Like some of you may think. I work for a hospital company and I do business development here in Utah.
Yeah, my name's Rashaga.
Oh, and I'm also black and Puerto Rican.
He's a little bit of a, caramel chocolate swirl.
Yeah, that caramel.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'm the classic chocolate vanilla swirl, if you get my drift. I'm half African American, half Caucasian. We're both in our mid-30s.
Yeah.
I also work in the healthcare industry as a healthcare sales representative for a biopharmaceutical company. I have 4 kids. And as we mentioned before, we live in northern Utah. What I want to talk about today is we want to talk about the recent events that happened in Minnesota. We want to talk about the actual event itself, and we want to talk about the fractured response that the nation has had to that event.
Yeah.
And then we want to talk about our experiences personally, especially in our local communities.
Yep.
And we want to challenge other people to share their thoughts and their feelings.
Yeah.
And we want to share what we think is productive in talking about this, because we realize that a lot of our white brothers and sisters and neighbors and friends, they want to help the black community. Yeah. I really sense that.
Yeah, they want to stand beside us. The people in our community, they've been positive. They've been really positive about the response, but I think that response needs to be
it's been awkward.
Yeah,
it's been very awkward. My friends that are on social media, some of the memes and the messages are all incredibly positive, but some of the things that have been said, in my view, have been really weird, awkward, and sometimes just inaccurate.
Yeah,
I know it comes from the absolute best motivations.
Yeah, agreed.
And so we want to talk about these issues and how our white brothers and sisters can how we understand that they could support our community.
Yep.
And we also want to talk to our community on what we think is an appropriate response. But again, we're going to get to the issue and our raw response to the actual issue. Yeah. And we all know what the actual issue is. You want to give us a recap of what happened with the officer and the unfortunate man?
Yeah. So Floyd. I'm not going to say anything else about him. Floyd had his neck, his airway was cut off, and he was murdered in broad daylight. So,
which is disgusting.
Yeah,
absolutely despicable.
Yeah, it's completely
brazen, by law enforcement,
right? By law enforcement and
other law enforcement officers
just there watching, And I see this as a person murdering another person. I don't see it as like a black man was being killed by a police officer. I see it as a person killing another person, and that broke my heart first off.
And that should break all hearts. If you're human, you should feel.
I didn't just. Yeah, if that was one of my Caucasian neighbors, I'd have ran out and tried to do something. Like, yo, man, what are you doing? Like, this is a person, and your knee is on his neck. Come on, man, same thing. But the point is that I was sad for the family, and I was sad for him, and I was sad for just the sheer violence that was happening.
And I think that the nation as a whole felt very similar. I think all of us, regardless of our background, were just appalled at what happened. Yeah, and angry. Yeah, and angry, sad, frustrated, all these things. How does this happen in 2020 America? How does this happen anyway?
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, this is extremely sad in 1950 or 1850. Yeah, America has fractured on our response. What is an appropriate response to an event like this? Some have viewed this event as a very unfortunate, isolated event, and some have viewed this event as just the tip of the iceberg of a much bigger problem. And for those that view it that way, they have chosen to air their voices and their grievances in some creative ways.
Yeah.
What's going on?
There's a lot of anger, frustration, rioting. I mean, there's 170 businesses.
Violent rioting.
Yeah, right.
Against all sorts of people.
Yeah, these weren't peaceful protests, how Martin Luther King said they should be done. In fact, during these peaceful protests, we should not degenerate into violence, right? And when he said that, he gives us a clear blueprint on how we should act when protesting. right? It should be peaceful. And I think that's clear.
It should be deliberate,
Mhm.
it should be intentional, and it should be assertive.
Agreed.
But it should always be under control and always peaceful. Because when we allow ourselves to be violent and uncontrolled and just raw emotion, we're causing our cause more damage.
Agreed.
More damage. And what is that I've seen some people almost try to say that this is almost somewhat justified.
Yeah.
That it's, you know, it's not right that they're being out of control and they're damaging property, but can you really blame them?
It's crazy. It's crazy.
I'm sorry. This
Yeah.
is unacceptable
Yeah.
for us to be saying things like this. It's completely unacceptable. Unacceptable for a couple of reasons. We're talking about adults.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to throw tantrums when things don't go our way or we don't feel like people are hearing us.
Yeah.
And we're also, you mentioned before,
Mhm.
we have a blueprint.
Yeah.
We have
Agreed.
a blueprint that was used by Martin Luther King and those that stood with Martin Luther King in times that are significantly more challenging racially
Yeah.
than they are right now.
Mhm.
And to pretend that we live back in the
Right.
1950s and 60s,
Yeah.
It's
And
not
even
accurate.
and even if you do believe that this time is still just as bad as then, that's totally fine. There's still a blueprint for how we should act, how we should carry ourselves, and how we should react to a situation of violence. And so if there's
MLK blueprint,
Yeah.
hashtag MLK blueprint.
yeah, we're gonna make that a hashtag. So for those of you that do have questions, look at what Martin Luther King did. A very good speech for you to listen to on Spotify. You can check it out. It's his Washington speech, and it's beautiful. In fact, I recommend you listen to that. If you've posted some nonsense on Facebook, or even if you haven't and you're considering posting some nonsense on Facebook, I would highly recommend that speech so you can understand what a peaceful protest is supposed to be. And then the understanding of what we are supposed to do as a black community, how we should be acting during a time of unrest.
Yes, and that you have to be bigger than the problem.
Yep.
You have to be better than the problem.
Yep.
This is just a basic principle.
Yep.
You can't fight fire with fire. We all know that.
Yep.
And so we just really want to see the community to come out and uniformly, black, white, yellow, condemn this type of action. There's no justification at all. There's
Yellow's racist,
none.
isn't
No.
Sometimes
But we also, after condemning this, we want to talk about a little bit about systemic racism.
Yep.
And what we mean by systemic racism. So a lot of the people that are perpetrating these riots think that what happened in Minnesota is the tip of the iceberg of a much bigger issue. And that much bigger issue is what a lot of people refer to as systemic or institutionalized racism. That is, the idea that racism, deep-seated racism, is interwoven throughout the fabric of the United States culture. And we can't speak for Minnesota directly. We can't speak for Alabama or Missouri or Florida or New York. But we've lived in Utah for a good part of our lives, my entire life, and we want to speak about our experiences with systemic racism in Utah. And we want to say, and we just want to create some awareness to how we think things are going. How have we progressed? Are we back in the 1950s?
Yeah.
Do we feel oppressed as being members of the black community?
I'm extra oppressed.
I know. It's just...
Extra oppressed. I don't know what I'm gonna do. All these nice neighbors I have. What am I gonna do, man? You know, I remember growing up here in Utah. To speak to that point and talk about, from a Utah perspective. I grew up in a very poor neighborhood. My mom and my
single mom.
Yeah, my mom and dad divorced. We moved from California to Utah, and she took care of 4 children. She worked 2 jobs and tried to go to school during that time. This idea of racism it's real, but it's the way that we react to racism, right? As black folks, and just in general, how we should react to racism is with peace. And my mom taught me when I was younger. She raised 4 kids, and she taught all of us that we should never react with violence, and we should never react emotionally. Living amongst primarily Caucasians, I experienced racism. However,
In what form?
they used to say like, oh, like we're just friends with you because you're black.
The token black guy.
Yeah, but it wasn't like they didn't let me use the water fountain.
Were they trying to beat you up after school?
I mean, nah, man, they weren't trying to. No, definitely not. But
it was kind of a social slant that they treated you differently because you were black.
Yeah, and these were like the elite. I mean, these were wealthy kids, and what I thought was they just didn't understand my culture, and they hadn't been around enough. Black folks or colored people to really understand our culture, right? And so my goal was to just educate them and be kind to them about my culture, and eventually, I won them over through just being kind. And
Isaiah was a popular kid in high school. He was the black kid, but everyone liked him. So he was treated differently because he was black, but people liked him. It wasn't a vicious type of a sentiment.
Yeah.
But as you worked your way into the professional world, what was your view? What was your experience with racism?
Working my way through the professional world, I did not see a whole lot of it. I mean, there was things that people would say in passing. Yeah, I mean, I could have taken a lot of what people said and treated that as like just things about my color. Oh, you're gonna steal. They would mess with me.
Little comments.
Yeah, comments. Uh-huh. But I never took that as. I just thought, they just don't know how to talk to black folks because they've never been around black folks. They just don't understand. And I could take that and really buy into it and be angry throughout my whole career and really like be bitter about that. But for some of these people, they live in a bubble, and I would say some people in Utah, they live in a bubble and they don't even know it. Because they don't know any black folks. Yeah. They ain't never been to a family reunion or barbecue. Come on now.
Eating watermelon fried chicken.
That's right, man. And I love watermelon and fried chicken. What did David Chappelle? I'm genetically predisposed.
But anyways, I want to get to this. Have you ever felt oppressed directly by the law enforcement system in Utah?
Definitely.
You have?
Yeah, for sure, man. There was a store that got robbed, and I was like a block away, and they handcuffed me and had me on the cement for like probably 45 minutes. I was like 13.
Okay, but in your adult life?
Oh, no, not in my adult life.
Okay.
But that's the thing, guys, is like what we have to remember is police are policemen, and they're going to do what they have to do, right? However, anybody in any other state they may have a different story. I'm just giving you my opinion.
Yeah. Do you feel that systemic racism has cost you any professional opportunities or limited where you could live?
No. My neighbors are too nice. I love where I live, and I think that I remember looking at a bill. Wouldn't let black folks live in the same neighborhoods as white folks. And the fact when I bought my first house here in Utah, I remember telling my wife, like, Chappelle, like, this is huge. Like, this is huge that we could live in this neighborhood. Like, I was so excited, And so when I see people kind of talking about the lack of progress, I'm like, what are we talking about?
Yeah, what are we talking about? Yeah. And
how about you?
My experiences, again, growing up as a half white, half black individual. My parents were interracial, and I've lived in Utah my entire life. And there may have been experiences that are more plentiful than I can remember. But growing up, I was never really treated significantly different than other people. As I grew into an adult, I went to college, graduated from college, got into my professional career, not in that order. but anyways, I'm married. I married a Caucasian woman. Yeah. There's not a lot of other African Americans to marry here, so if you're gonna get married, in a lot of cases.
And just to be clear, I ended up marrying his sister.
Yeah, so he didn't really have the hookup the other way around. So
I did, man. I did.
So he couldn't return the favor. But anyways, I really never really felt like I was disadvantaged in Utah. I really never felt like people were looking at me differently. And I've worked my entire professional life in sales. Yeah. And when you're in sales, you're dependent on your client being willing to work with you. And so, and I've always been a successful salesperson. I won an award last year for being the highest, the fastest growing sales individual in my sales area, and I work the doctors and the clinics and the nurses I work with are almost all white.
Yeah.
And so if there was widespread racism in what a lot of people would consider an elite community, the medical community, I think I would pick up on it. I think I would see it, and I think I would suffer from it. I also live in a suburban neighborhood in Layton, Utah.
It's a nice neighborhood.
Yeah, it's a nice neighborhood.
It's a real nice neighborhood.
I'm the only black blood in that, probably for miles.
Yeah.
And my neighbors have been great. My neighbors have been very welcoming, and it's been a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
And so we can't talk. I mean, we really have to nitpick to come up with racist events in our lifetimes.
Yeah, and the events that I experienced, they may have not. I mean, maybe I seen them wrong, but maybe they were racist, or maybe they weren't. But when I was younger, I definitely thought more about it. But as getting older, in fact, the point that I'll make, and then we can move on, is when we were growing up, there were events that happened that I thought were racist, and he didn't. But I never said anything to Rashago because he just seen people as people. But I kind of had to learn that as I got older. My mom taught me the right way, but getting older, he would just see people as people, and I kind of thought, maybe I shouldn't react so harshly, and it's always helped me. It's always helped me be more peaceful. And this dude he's super peaceful. So if you talk bad to him online, he's probably gonna be nice to you. Anyway, moving on.
Anyways, we just wanted to share our stories, and we wanted to encourage other black individuals or members of the black community in Utah or in other states to point out, what are your experiences? Because we just don't. We think that there's been tremendous growth in race and race in America, and we don't feel like the black man is under fire. We feel like we can live where we want to live, we can get the jobs we want to get as long as we put in the work that we're supposed to put. And I don't feel like I have to work any harder than anyone else. I feel like success requires hard work, yes, I agree. But I don't think I'm disadvantaged because I'm part of the African American community. And again, we're talking, this is our experience here in Utah. We want other people's experience, and we also want other people's input on MLK Blueprint hashtag. Or hashtag MLK Blueprint. So please share your thoughts, your comments, any questions that you have for us. We're happy to address them.
And in closing, we are going to have a few more of these videos because we do feel like the discussion needs to continue. And so, again, we'll chat with you soon, and we would love a kind discourse. If you feel like reaching out, we will respond. So please, guys, just be kind.
Okay. Peace out. Hashtag MLK Blueprint.
Boom.
I think that was the best.
That was a good one.
Yeah.